Welcome to another episode of the Unblock Your BS podcast. Today, I am bringing on actually the very first client I got off of TikTok. This gentleman had seen a video I had done about being able to look in the mirror and say, I love you to your own eyes, staring longingly into your eyes. And he said that it broke him that he couldn't even do that. And we developed a friendship from that. He became a client of mine. We've done coaching, we've done somatic release breath work. And the amount of change I've noticed, just not in only his energy, but also his ability to process really heavy emotions based on the trauma he experienced as a childhood and a dependency on alcohol. It has been nothing but amazing, a miracle even. And today, Matthew is coming on to share his journey, the male perspective on being vulnerable and addressing repressed emotions, being able to use your voice, speak your truth, find your most authentic self amidst chaos, divorce, separation from his daughter. There has been quite the journey this man has gone on, and he is in a really, really good space and a really good season when he has experienced a lot of hurt when it comes to family and relationships. So I'm excited for you to kind of hear Matthew tell his story and his journey in his own words, how perspective shifting, how coaching, how breath work has really helped him to view life through a different lens and how he's been able to find himself amidst the journey he's been on in the last about year. So welcome to the podcast, Matthew Hess. Well, welcome, Matthew. You and I have been connected, I want to say, gosh, almost 5-ish months now. Can you kind of share with everybody how, you kind of started seeing my content and what prompted you to reach out and start connecting?
Well, after my divorce and decided to sell my business and home, I had bought a mobile home and decided to go on a journey. And I traveled a bit, and my goal was to get closer to my daughter out in the West Coast. So I was able to find something to do up there, work camping actually, and to be close to her. Actually, was able to get a campground that was only 10 minutes away from her in the mountains, and working on that relationship. And at the same time, I was going through trying to get away from my addictions. And part of the addiction, like the dopamine rushes and all that other kind of thing was TikTok was helping me through that, flipping through. It's part of a dopamine addiction kind of thing that works out. And I came across, one of your videos. And then it just started coming up again and again. And then I was actually able to introspectively look into my marriage because I was trying to figure out where I went wrong. I could be angry at my ex all that I wanted for things, but I was like, well, what triggered her reactions? Like what did I do or what could I have done differently? I was like, so I don't want to go through this ever again. Of course, I don't want to be all alone. So the way I got in touch with you, I just reached out and I was like, hey, that hit home. Your message hit home. I forget.
Mirror one, right? I remember it. So the context, it was, I think it was something along the lines of, can you stand in front of a mirror, look yourself in the eyes and say, I love you? And you said that broke me. And
Yeah.
I reached out. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't even brush my teeth. I didn't realize I wasn't even looking at myself in the mirror when I brushed how you do that? I wasn't even doing that. I got toothpaste all in my mirror. No, but yeah, that started it. And then we got hooked up with the breath work and just that 30-minute YouTube video that you helped me through, and then going through that and realizing like, oh my God, there is something there. And my body was going through like convulsions for like a week. Like and then I slept. And you're like, yeah, how'd you sleep? And I was like, man, like a baby.
Right.
So
Well, I guess the context to that, right? Okay, so I had sent you, so we had connected through DMs and then text messages, and I had sent you a video that is the more intensive part of breath work. And this was where I kind of recognized I needed to create more structure in how I was supporting people. Because at this time, I wasn't doing anything with TikTok as far as just posting content. There was no coaching, there was none of that. I do that in a separate business. And so I sent that to you because you were having a really hard time and I was in the middle of putting my kids to bed. And then you had a little bit of a panic attack and you were freaking out through text message. And I was like, oh shit, the importance of breath work is also getting you out of it. And in my naiveness, I just sent you into the lion's den and without a rope to get out. So we learned, we're evolving and growing, but I want to first off acknowledge that how vulnerably you showed up and what a strength that actually is from a man, especially, right? You did not hold back. You and I had many conversations about masculine versus feminine and how it was actually easier to open up to a woman and get a woman's perspective, that felt safer for you specifically. So can you kind of talk to me about what allowed you to kind of start to challenge emotions that were coming up for you to share them openly with essentially a stranger on the internet and a talking head on TikTok, and start to really be open to me speaking into what you were experiencing?
Well, when I was talking to you, you were, I don't know if this is the right word, but stoic. You were giving me the space to say what I needed to do to show my emotion and not show any kind of judgment. You were listening. I knew you were listening because you would stop me because I'd be talking really fast, like I tend to do. And you would pick up on something that was very important. You say, let's go back here. And that triggered me to say, oh my gosh, she's really interested because she's really in, you're really paying attention and you're picking up on things that made me stop and think and attack, because I had set out on this year to really with a mission to improve myself, to get better, to get clean, to figure out what in the heck is going on in my life. Why are things going the way they are? I am, the common denominator, as you say, is your own videos, or what's the issue or am I experiencing? Yeah, just like your video say. And so that's what triggered it for me. I mean, I had a female therapist for year like probably the entire time I was married, like 15 years. And I was working in the government, I had to go to therapy. But I was getting fed medications. And then it was the whole last year, I just decided to stop taking it. I would change my diet, got keto, lost 80 pounds and was feeling so much better. But I still had that little bit of alcohol addiction. And I've been trying to figure out why couldn't I, like, even when I'm sitting there thinking about it, it's like, man, I can quit everything else. But what is it?
Yeah.
And so I felt like I needed to dig a little bit deeper, and the breath work and then thinking and being on my own in seclusion and this lifestyle has awarded me that. Yeah, it may not be the best, it's like I find that putting myself in harder situations or not so much comfort, that I use the Rocky analogy. I went to Russia to learn how to fight, in the snow and stuff. I've always felt whenever I put myself in hard, difficult situations, my mind tends to look inward, to fight itself, to have my mind grow a little bit stronger, to have my body pay attention. So I can say, I'm going to eat better. I am not going to drink. I am not going to do these things. I am going to get emotionally better. So that was my drive. And then you came across, how you came across me, I don't know, cosmically,
YP gods.
the FYP gods, and the urge, I just started paying attention. I'm, listening to God. We could say God, we could say the universe, we can equate it to anything, but, praying for me every morning opened up a lot of different things. And I started paying attention to my thoughts and my inner voice. And every time I paid attention to how my body was feeling, and that was something that you also said, is like, pay attention to how your body's reacting. Are you reacting from your gut? Are you feeling sick? And it's a negative. You should probably look at, and comparing it to different chakras.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. So that's how I started to say, like, well, there's something here. And that's when I started realizing improvement. And that's when I started realizing, okay, it doesn't happen so fast. And then I started thinking, okay, well, then I started we did like what, 2 breathwork sessions, maybe more,
I think
one other one.
so, yeah. Like the full hour-long breathwork sessions where I do take you out of the lion's den and you feel calm, clear, and peaceful and, like, have clarity on what's next. So kinda talk to me about that first breathwork session, and what was the experience for you, but also what was the takeaway?
The experience was, well, it was funny that I was trying to talk to you and I didn't realize I pressed mute because I was sweet.
I figured,
No,
God, because I could see you, but yeah, obviously couldn't hear you.
it was emotional. It was, I mean, it was going through that breathing when you were going through it. It was a weird feeling. I didn't recognize. That's why I was trying to talk to you, but it was funny. It was muted because I was actually able to talk through what was actually going through my mind.
Yeah.
Stuff from childhood, my daughter, and thoughts, and helps. Like you asked those questions because I couldn't quite figure it out, and you helped during those breathwork sessions, to dig a little bit deeper and get to the root cause of it, which was, to me, amazing. Like I was like breath, whatever, but actually going through it. So
Breathwork doesn't really, it doesn't exactly I think there's a stigma with breathwork that's just like box breathing or taking mindful breaths. And this is not like the somatic release breathwork is totally different.
Well, what I realized was whenever I have a negative thought or feeling, my body tenses up and my breath, I tend to hold my breath and I'm not breathing. So I feel like, okay, well, if I'm not breathing, it's not getting oxygen to my brain. So I can't think clearly.
Yep.
So, laying down and doing that and then actually getting oxygen flowing, blood flowing helps I don't know if this is the way it works, but this is what I think the way it works is that it helps me cognitively think through the deeper thoughts that are there within my conscious and be able to tap into that.
Rather than fighting your nervous system. So, usually, what your brain is trying to do is solve for a problem that it experiences in the body. So, for you, it's holding your breath, tension, tightness, stress, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. And your brain is trying to solve for why do I feel this way? And usually it is a hormonal response by your amygdala, the part of the back part of your brain responsible for emotion. It's fight or flight, fawn or freeze, the survival mechanisms. And so your brain is trying to look in your external world and like your memories and your consciousness to solve for why you feel that way so that you stop feeling that way. But when we add in the breath, depending on the style of breath, there's two different styles we do in a breathwork session. But that first one is meant to bring up the emotion that our brain is trying to repress because it doesn't feel safe. So we create a safe container and we allow the emotion to come up and to come out. And that's where you can start to get some clarity of like, okay, if I lean into the emotion instead of stop holding it back and fighting it so much, what is it telling me? Right? Am I listening to my body? Because my body knows the way out of this. Our bodies are incredibly smart. Our brain is just meant for survival. So it's going to try and keep you in the known, which oftentimes for most of us is a really shitty place to be. Right. And so it's going into the unknown of what happens when I lean into this emotion. Am I still safe? And so then on that second half, when we start to transition to how do we want to feel, we are actually signaling our body through the breathing through the nose and out through the mouth that your body is safe. And that's where the body really gets calm. You almost get sleepy. I think most people do try to fall asleep, even though I recommend against it. But you kind of have almost an out of body experience. You have so much clarity because your body is clear. And now your mind is not trying to solve for the problem in the body. So you have much more clarity of, well, what do I want now? Right? I'm not trying to be in survival mode. I can actually start to think creatively and start to problem solve creatively and envision and get creative about the future.
Absolutely. And that also, like to add on top of that, I also took away from that how I felt afterwards versus using alcohol to relax my body and get that euphoric feeling of relaxation. Two totally different feelings because one leads you down towards the toxic butt path where you'll just say anything, whatever, just to get away from the feeling, even if it's negative.
Yep.
And then when you go through the breath work, it's a much lighter feeling, more creative feeling, writing things down. I even wrote down a business plan. This last one after my conversation with my father, I haven't had craving for alcohol since that.
So tell me about that because that wowed me when we were talking in the pre-interview. So explain, just kind of give a little bit of context of the primary reasons that your father and you had such a strained relationship, how you used your voice in that, and how that has affected you since.
Well, so this goes back to childhood. My parents have been divorced. I moved away from my mother when I think it was when I was 15 years old. It was between a strange time. But I left my older sister and my brother where I protected them. And I'm trying to just give a quick thing of what happened. And I realized that I've been holding a lot back where I just went through the motions when I lived with my father all through high school and stuff. And just to feast him and, my stepmother, I went through and never really spoke my mind and wanted to get over a few things, right? And discuss a few things that I, experienced. Well, I don't know why I had to do this on his birthday. Well, I was gonna go pick something up that was, some mail that got delivered there. This is how it happened. And then my dad said, "Don't, expect to come into the house or whatever and talk. It's just not gonna happen." I'm not gonna get into how that conversation happened. I had to do it in text. I was so upset. I was like, "Okay, well, Dad, I wouldn't expect anything more from a fearful avoidant where I wanted to actually talk to you." And then I just laid out, in format, this is what I wanted to talk about and this is what your actions were. And I just wanted to talk to you, but you are closing off communication. And then there was another one after that. And I just said what I said last. And I felt so much better after saying it and calling everybody out on their own bullshit. But yeah, you might have to cut that out.
The context of the show is bullshit. So it's that's away, buddy. That's away.
Well, no, I mean, I actually spoke my truth and I realized after doing that, it's like, holy mackerel, I've been appeasing so many people and not exposing what I experienced or noticed from them that I just been moving my, like, just, I don't know, downing myself. I don't know, to just to keep the peace, And I said, I'm just tired of, appeasing you just so that way I can be in your good grace, you know, agreeing with whatever you think and say, just being, and after that, it was like, oh my God, I came up with a business plan. Like, I wrote out a whole business plan. You ever seen the business plan? You know what I'm talking about. That doesn't happen in one day. Like, I felt so light and so much better. Like, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to speak my whole truth now. And I have not had a craving for alcohol since.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, for me, it is. Because I would talk myself and I'm like, yeah, I'll go get a six pack, whatever. No, it's like my mind's like, no, why would you do that? You feel sick. Like, I go through all the reasons why I didn't want to. And it's so much easier to access that thought and tell my body, no.
Yeah, because your brain is not trying to escape anymore. It faced the scary monsters, right? Because I remember you saying several times, like, just how you had so many things that you wanted to say to people, but you felt like you just never could, or you were worried about what that would do to the relationship. And it's like you finally got permission to be you, regardless of how they responded and reacted. But you got to
Well, yeah. Well, I also realized that because of my toxic traits, the medicate, how I, alcohol and all that, I attracted toxic people. Like, that's what I was attracting. I was looking outward, like, because of my behavior and because of the way I was attracting people like that into my life. So now it's like I got a clean slate, you know. I don't know what's next. I'm just kind of like waiting. Not really, but kind of like,
call it resting.
yeah, we'll call it resting. I feel like I've been resting this whole month and I'm getting anxious. It's like I got like all this bottled up energy and it's like, feel kind of frumpy. I haven't been exercising. I'm just like, all right, what's my next move? But it hasn't helped that it's been below 20 degrees for, for a while.
Snowshoeing sounds good. Ugh. So kind of talk to me about, we've had all this clarity. Let's talk about what is next, right? So when you think about, you clearly wrote a business plan, right? And I know that you've been talking more on TikTok and kind of starting to share a little bit more vulnerably about your journey. What is the next right step for you? Doesn't have to be you've got everything figured out and you've got the 20-step plan, but what would be one thing that you could start to channel your, all this pent up energy towards?
Well, I've been wanting to share my experience, and I know I'm not the only person that's gone through life problems, right, and issues. But I found that this lifestyle offers an opportunity. It may not be for everybody, but some men, I find that seclusion, and being alone with your own thoughts, forcing yourself to just only count on yourself. Because, I have people I counted on, getting back to who I was and what I wanted to do. I want to share and needing more clean, my experience and then provide a place for that. So I wrote a plan about, okay, how can I buy land, have like maybe an RV resort and have a nonprofit part where I can have people come in who want to get off away from addiction and put them in touch like with you and CK and some churches. And, I've been looking at, I have very fertile farmland here. I don't know that this is such a great place because it has been getting cold here. So I've been looking more south. Um, but, how can I create an environment for that? And then, have, like, I found that farming, grounding, breath work, eating healthier, getting educated, having the quiet time and providing people the opportunity, like whether it's 6 months, they don't have to pay for a thing. A place, for their RV. It's just they have their RV if they can do it. If not, maybe there'll be something provided there. But, I wrote this whole way I can even set up a nonprofit, and I feel like I want to be able to do that because I find there's a lot of people I'm seeing them on TikTok. There are so many groups now that are about sobriety. Like, I thought I was going to be the only one on TikTok. No, there's like people that are just on live and they're all talking and helping each other. Like, yeah, I feel this way. I want to reach for it. And they're like, oh, we don't have to do it. And they're all just doing their own group therapy. It's why I hope TikTok doesn't go away because I'm seeing a lot of people actually healing from just coming together and have that because we don't have, we're not getting together, good thing that bars, people aren't doing that anymore because that takes that part out of it. But people are forced to be online or, in a social media application that we can afford to do this. Cause look how many more people are coming together now.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Right. Well, and that's like the thing with social media is that you don't own it. Right. And I know I've been doing social media marketing for 8 years. So I know the only thing you really own when it comes to that stuff is your email list. So even just being able to have people on an email list that you can contact or connect with, um, as far as like TikTok, I don't think it's going to disappear overnight. It'll be just like either a slow death, but it would be ridiculous for them to just not do anything with it and let it die. Because there's 170 million businesses that use it and millions, if not billions of dollars involved. So who knows, but like that's life, right? There's a lot that you're out of control of. So for you specifically, what's one action to start down that path? You've got a good game plan. So what's the next right step?
I've been, well, that's the trick is I was like, do I go talk to this? As a matter of fact, I went to high school with the guy that worked down at the bank down there. And I thought about just showing up and asking him, taking out to lunch, like, how can we make this happen? Because he's an investor as well. And I actually saw a property in close to Pigeon Forge that was up for sale that was like perfect. It had, but it's also $14 million. But Navy Fed will only, yeah. So, yeah. So the VA will give me a certain amount for DCRA where I can actually, if I had rent, whatever, but I'd need to have at least 2 or 3 other that, to go in.
Or maybe just like, 5 acres of that little section of land.
I know, but it was also a resort that actually could pay for it. So it had, yeah. So I was like, remember when I saw like I can have a resort and where I can afford to have people come in there for free. So I was like, I saw that. I was like, all right, so maybe it's not this one, but I do know that they exist now.
Right. So the next right step is setting up that meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Is paying attention to the universe and setting up that meeting.
Right. And just going in and like you're on a fact finding mission. It doesn't have to mean anything. It's like you're going to learn one way or the other just by the experience of it.
Yeah. Like, how can I do this? People use other people's money or no money down all the time.
Right. And it's just getting educated on the process of what that could look like and his expertise that he has a little bit more knowledge than you do and starting to work a plan because then that will reveal the next right step after that.
Well, I don't know. Are you familiar with this real estate mogul? I can't think of his name right now. I don't want to be rude and look him up. He's a real big real estate guy. He is on social media. He's got short hair. He talks about buying buildings and turning them over. He actually just set up this whole new plan that I was just talking about how he's going to use everyday people to fund this fund to go buy these properties and to earn residual income based on real estate and show you how to do that. So it was kind of funny. I came across that.
The FYP again.
The FYP, it's kind of freaky. It's like Eric chip in my head, frequency.
It tracks your keyboard on your phone. So if you're researching stuff or texting people stuff, TikTok has access to what you type in a keyboard. So that's why it can be really aligned. I think they're also kind of listening because I will verbally talk about an example I used just to kind of make fun of it. I was like, goats.
God, you did that to me. Thank you.
Yeah, but I hyped it for you, but I've tested it with just audio and it still works. So if you guys are listening to this and goats show up on your FYP, they're listening. And whatever, they want to listen in on my conversations, more power to them.
It's not like, yeah, whatever. Information's, what the whole world's run on. That everybody's information's worth something to somebody for some reason.
Right. And I don't have anything to hide. So bring it on. Bring it on. Yeah. Right. Well, any last takeaways that you want to share with listeners about the healing journey, about the, struggling with alcoholism or addiction and how to overcome that and help your nervous system start to regulate where you're not suffering as much and needing to self-medicate?
So what are you saying? What was the point? What was
the question you want to share with about, your journey?
Now that I've been able to recognize or get back in touch with, I don't know if I ever really knew who I am or if I was ever in touch with it. I don't know. But actually being able to pay attention to my thought processes and what's important and to be able to listen to what people say. It's kind of funny. I've been, talking to, I just come across, just thought, women that are out there that just come across, and they're like, hey, how you doing? And then, so I've just kind of been practicing and talking to women and I pay attention a lot and I've just come up with a few creative questions to ask and I'm able to pick out this person, maybe she's not the greatest, like she's got some things to work on and I'll just leave it alone. So
I do it for a living.
Yeah. So being able to recognize other people's, where they are in life and being able to meet them where they are. That's what's been able to help me.
Beautiful. Yeah, what I do is called neuro-linguistic programming. That's probably a little bit of what you're picking up on is there are certain words that
Mm,
people say that you start to get curious about. You're like, "Well, that's interesting. I wonder why they said that." And that was a lot of what I did with you at the beginning, right? Where it was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, pause. Let's go back to this," because it indicates a belief in your head. It's
mm.
really hard to not do that for me, like, in a romantic relationship because I don't wanna get into coach mode, like, that's not my role in that part of my life, but I find people endlessly fascinating. Everybody is like a Rubik's cube to me that I'm trying to figure out and which button to pull next, and so part of that is a lot of language because if you think about it, people have all sorts of thoughts. We have 60,000 thoughts a day, and then we put those through a filter when we speak to communicate in what a societally acceptable way that we think to say whatever it is we're saying. And so it's interesting the word choices that people will use if you start to get present to it. And then if you do that enough, you start to recognize the patterns of the limiting belief in there because we're not all that different. How we exhibit behaviors and how we came to these traumatic beliefs or limiting beliefs can be very different, but it's all basically the root, same core wounds, if you will, right? Like your experience looks very different than mine, but we both self abandon and we're people pleasers, right?
And we can recognize where each other are in our journey because we're like, I experienced that. I know how, it's like, I know how that felt. And
Empathy.
he,
And
yeah,
not judgment. Like, that's a huge piece that I think a lot of people miss, and what you experienced as safety was actually a place of me not judging. Because how can I judge when I know I don't have my shit together and I've been through stuff too? And so I lead with that of no matter what you've been through and even your past and your history, because I know you struggle with that a lot, just stop judging yourself for it. You did the best you could with the skills and tools you had at that time, and some radical acceptance of what is and what happened so that you can start to move forward in your life without the shame and the guilt, which is judgment.
exactly. Yeah. And being, I guess for men, it's being okay, being vulnerable and then getting used to, I guess other reason why, is because, okay, you're wherever you are, you're on the other side of the screen. You're not right in front of me where it's like, I can be vulnerable with you. And then like, I've always had women. Yeah, I've always had, women throw, if I've tried to be vulnerable, like throw it back in my face at some point in time, or they use it against me. And I think a lot of men experience that too.
100%. And I would say that that's also true for women just in a different way. I don't know. It's not that it's thrown back in your face. It's just not even received or welcomed. And to
It's
me,
against,
it,
I think it's more physical when guys use it against women. Feel mentally abused though. Whereas women will use it, I feel as though it's like a weapon because women are good at like targeting, like honing in, I feel.
right. And all of that is a trauma response, right? And all of that is an indicator that that person is not a safe person because what they're doing to you, they're doing to themselves. And vice versa. It's just a mirror. So for me specifically, if I was in a partnership where that started to happen, I would immediately be like, this is not a safe person for me. I'm no longer going to pursue this. Right. If that person can't hold space for me, I'm not going to allow that to change my vulnerability because to me, vulnerability is huge. You can't have intimacy and connection without it. So it is a requirement to be in my inner circle and have access to me because if I start to experience like what I experienced in my marriage, where me getting vulnerable was just shut down. I was yelled at, I was screamed at for being vulnerable and sharing my hurts. Then I start to repress that, not share that, lose myself. And I've already done that. I don't want to do it again. Like I ain't getting any younger. So part of that is just recognizing that that is that own person's discomfort with vulnerability, not any reflection on you. And you should just not be vulnerable and you should just shut down and keep it to yourself. That's just not an emotionally safe partner, which is someone you shouldn't be in a relationship with. I'm just saying, I'm just saying.
Yeah. And that's the reason why I came up with, well, I think I shared one of the questions was, okay, hey, if we're having grilled cheese and tomato soup, like how would you cut the sandwich? And just wait for the response from the other person. And any response, there isn't one correct one. There's one that I look for, which is how would you want to cut? That's what I look for because then they're paying attention to what I would, but any other way. And then how I would respond to how they would say, well, look, they take it the way I want. Well, why wouldn't you ask me? And then see the reaction on that. If they take it as, hey, this is going to be a fight, it's like, okay, well, you like to argue or call me a name. Like, I think you were called a narcissist. Well, okay, well, there's a name. Like, okay, so you must be a narcissist.
Narcissist by Lonely Man on TikTok. I mean, Jesus.
But anyways, I just found like I come up with certain questions like that, and I pay attention to people how they react to my questions.
Yeah.
You know,
You can also see it when you get vulnerable too. If and this I actually asked on another episode, Eric, you think I've connected you with Eric. I asked him at what point do you start to get vulnerable with somebody that you're pursuing in like a dating sense or a romantic sense? And neither one of us really had like a clear-cut answer. I know for me, I'm like slow burn. I want to be friends first because that I can do vulnerability in layers because I am such a student of human behavior and I have to like turn that part of my brain off, but it's also what keeps me safe and protected. And so I noticed that instead of being vulnerable, I focus on their shit and I psychoanalyze them and I support them, which is me going into coach mode, which means I don't feel safe. So it's almost like I have to like rework my brain if it's getting into like a romantic or we're, trying to date to turn that side off so that I can share vulnerably and allow them to hold space for me if they can. And that takes time. I think he said he could probably do it a little bit sooner. He'd rather get into the deeper conversations much earlier on and like suss out how it's going to turn out sooner rather than later, which I agree with. But it's such an individual, unique experience based on your past experiences too.
I feel that way. The way you described what you said, I like to get into it because I'm not one for small talk. To me, it's yeah, yeah. I'd much rather ask interesting questions and get a response.
Really? How grilled cheese is pet.
Yeah, and then, the whole coffee date thing. It's like, well, you know what? Zoom's great. TikTok can be great. A lot of things are out there. I think that should be a new way, a safe way for women to feel, like either Zoom meetings or having coffee over TikTok or something like that. And just typing things out first. And then if you want to have a video meeting, I feel like people should do that because now like, can a woman feel more safe than going out and meeting somewhere because you don't know what's going to happen, especially at night, you know, there's, I mean, let's face it, women are more vulnerable in those situations than men. Yeah, so they're not really honed in on the date per se. They're actually, I find that women tend to be more focused on what's happening around them, or something else. And I
And
feel like,
it also opens up your reach of people because being self-aware, going on a healing journey is still rare in the general population. So those that are also single and somewhat age appropriate, right? For you to be able to find each other is probably not going to be necessarily in your immediate area. So if you are opening up to more distance or you're looking for a primarily emotional connection, intimacy, and then it can lead to physical, then that might give you more options. Because I know a lot of the messages I receive is like, I live in a small town. Like, I know everybody. They know me. There's nobody here I would date. Like, I totally get that. And there's the World Wide Web and FaceTime and all of that. So you can still build a relationship with somebody and then be intentional about solving for whatever logistical, physical challenges you guys both face.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's my 2 cents. And granted, my ex-husband was in the military, so I did like 8-month deployments, like whenever. I could see you every 2 weeks. That's the cakewalk. All right, Matthew. Well, thank you so much for being on the episode with me and sharing your journey. And we will link up how to connect with Matthew and kind of see what he's been up to and find him on TikTok while it lasts. Any last words you want to share, Matthew?
I'm just thankful that I came across your profile. It's great getting to know you. Had a lot of fun and laughs. You showed me that gym picture. I'm rooting for you. And I hope this takes off for you.
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. All right, everyone. Have a good one. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Unblock Your BS podcast. I hope you found this conversation as powerful and inspiring as I did. Before we wrap up, I want to extend an invitation to you. Yes, you. If you have a story to share about your own healing journey, insights on self-awareness or healing, or if you're navigating the path of personal growth and would love to explore it further, I'd love to have you as a guest on one of the future episodes. This space is all about having real, meaningful, and honest conversations, whether it's diving into a breakthrough you've had, exploring a topic that's close to your heart, or even joining me for live coaching. It's all about unblocking the belief systems and stories that might be holding you back and finding ways to fully step into your most authentic self. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, reach out to me. You can head on over to unblockyourbs.com/podcast. I'll link that up in the show notes if you want to apply to be on the show, if you want to join me for some live coaching because you really need the support and the insight. And then, hey, don't forget to share this episode with someone who might need it. Leave a review if you're loving the podcast. Tell me your favorite parts. Tell me what you want to hear. And until next time, keep unblocking your BS and creating the life you deserve. Have a good one.